folks. In language arts, we are continuing to read Tinstar. And as we recall last time, right now we're on page 158. Last time it looks like Luke, he was riding with bounty hunters. And as you recall, they saw some horses in the far end of the land. And Luke was pretty convinced that those were the posse that was after him. And so he pretended to be one of the gang, waving at him and everything. And then when they finally went the other way, it was time for Luke to suggest, hey, maybe we can be focused on this other one. Remember, he had met Marta, uh, the Pinkerton agent, Marta Shearing, and he was gearing the men to go toward her. And so his suggestion was maybe we want to follow her and keep on the trail. He didn't tell him it was her. Keep on the trail of the single rider. The single rider, of course, being Marta Shearing, making sure that they think they're following after the guy who may have ripped off the Crossroads Bank. It's just like there may be a little bit of distrust all the way around. It may be that they're like wondering, do we really have, maybe we have the guy who robbed the bank, or maybe we have the guy who was one of the culprits in the bank. You don't know. It's a tense situation. Luke's forced to go along with it because he needs to go along with it. He has to get from point A to point B. On 158, yeah, safe. They're getting ready to camp out. Yeah, safe. Zeke said. Luke wanted to play poker with this man. His face told every thought running through his treacherous brain. He stepped down and stretched as he pulled off the saddlebags containing what gear he had and the food the farmer had sold him. He said, I swear, you two better not take long. I'm hungry enough to eat a wolf, growl, and all. Make up a real good fire over there against that rock so it's out of sight from farther along the trail. Deke inclined his head to his partner. They wheeled about and trotted off. Luke forced himself to count to 100 to give them enough time of a head start. Quickly slinging his saddlebags back over the plowed horse's rump, he mounted again. Before he followed his bounty hunters, he checked the load in his 6-gun. He snapped it shut and tucked it into his holster. He wished he had ammunition for the Derringer too, but it had a wish to burn. He'd asked for a full troop and cavalry to back him up. Whatever happened, he was on his own. The trail had grown indistinct, but he caught enough trace of Marta's passage to know she had slowed considerably. If she was a mile ahead, he'd be surprised. While he lacked the sharp tracking skills of Zeke and Deke, he had learned a great deal since setting out on Benedict's trail. As he rode, finally glad the horses picked its way so carefully, not making much sound as it walked. Pardon me. Okay. I missed the point. Okay, there we go. All right. So as he rode, finally glad the horse picked its way so carefully, not making much sound as it walked, he worried that any gunfire would alert Rhodes and his men. From all the times he had looked along their back trail, the posse was nowhere to be seen. Since leaving the lake, he and the bounty hunters had traveled more than 5 miles. Even if the posse heard the gunfire, a hard gallop meant they were an hour away unless they killed their horses. The twilight made the going even more hazardous. Keeping his eyes peeled for the 2 gunmen ahead, he kept heading in the direction they had ridden. Any chance of seeing their hoofprints or martyrs was gone in the dying light of day. His heart leaped into his throat when he heard Deke drawl, "All right, little lady, you just keep that hand off your iron." Aha, it looks like they found Marta. The Pinkerton lady? The twilight made even more hazardous. Okay, all right. My partner's right about that, chimed in Zeke. It's It'd be a plumb shame if you did anything stupid and ended up ventilated. Marta's reply was garbled, but the tone came through loud and clear. She understood what surrendering to the bounty hunters without a fight meant. It would be a long, tortured night for her, and eventually they would kill her. Better to shoot it out here and now. Luke put his heels to the horse flanks. It kept moving along at the same maddeningly slow gait. A quick exchange of shots echoed back along the trail. He kept taking his heels against the horse's flanks and got a reluctant burst of speed from the animal. Okay. I have to admit, I'm a little confused here. I thought he was supposed to find camp. It looks like he's chasing up the bounty hunters. I'm not really sure what's going on. A quick exchange of shots echoed along the trail. He kept raking his heels against the horse's flanks and got a reluctant burst of speed from the animal. It wasn't much, but he rounded the rocky prominence and came on a small pond surrounded by a few cottonwoods. The muzzle flash for the head showed Marta made her stand, but he couldn't find either of the bounty hunters. Unless he did, riding ahead only put him in the crossfire. Ending up dead did nothing to help Marta shearing or bring any of the Rhodes gang to justice. Worse, he had no hankering to go knocking on the pearly gates, not yet. So he drew his pistol and looked around. A shadow moving across darkness drew his fire. Whatever he aimed at wasn't human. Twin tongues of flame lanced at him from directions completely unexpected. Luke fell off his horse, which kept on moving at its own pace, leaving him on his back and exposed to hot lead from the bounty hunters and the Pinkerton agent. Now we're on chapter 13. Luke winced as a slug tore past his leg. Another ripped a hunk of leather from his boot. With a powerful kick, he rolled over and kept rolling. Dirt danced in tiny tornadoes around him until he fetched up hard against a fallen rotted log. This protected him from bullets aimed at him from one direction. He got his bearings and trained his gun on a spot where the muzzle flash momentarily revealed Deke, all crouched down and intent on killing something. 3 quick shots rewarded him with a yelp. He doubted Deke was seriously wounded, but he had forced him out of the fight for a few seconds. Flopping onto the other side of the log opened him to attack from where he believed Marta Shearing had taken over. "It's me, Miss Shearing, Luke Hadley." He propped his gun hand on the log and bided his time. Bided his time. Patience paid off. Zeke tried to make a dash for where Deke moaned and cursed in pain. Luke emptied his gun. Over the past few months, he had developed a sense of when he hit a target and when he missed. The emptiness in his gut warned him he had done nothing more than add wings to Zeke's feet. The bounty hunter reached his partner without paying a penalty in flesh and blood. Luke broke open the action, ejected the spent cartridge, and began reloading. "Get over here, you are exposed. They've circled." Marta Shearing's urgent warning carried a hint of fear along with it. He snapped shut the Schofield and started rolling hands over his head. Rocks tore at his body and twig poked into his leg with as much intensity as if he had been knifed. Heeding Marta's warning proved a smart move. 2 streams of bullets blasted hunks of the fallen tree into the air. If he'd stayed, at least one round would have found him. He wiggled and slithered and finally dug his 2 toes into the ground to get some purchase. A mighty lunge carried him forward to land in a grassy patch beside a cottonwood. He located the Pinkerton agent by smell before he saw her. "That's a mighty fine perfume you're wearing," he said. She cursed under her breath before saying, "I haven't had time to take a bath. It's the only way I can stand myself when I'm on the trail." "I can't object." He got his feet under him and crouched on the other side of the rugged tree trunk. She fired now and then. He gauged the direction, moved closer to her, and added to his fire to hers. "Stop shooting," she said testily. "Unless you've got a box of ammo in your coat pocket." He said, "All I have is my gun belt." He ran his fingers along the tiny cases and made a quick estimate. 12 rounds plus what I have in my pistol. He remembered that he hadn't reloaded fully. 15 shots, that's all I have. "Do you have a rifle?" He shook his head and realized she couldn't see him too well. My six shooter is all I have. Do you have any idea who we were up against? Are they stragglers from the Rhodes gang? He quickly explained Zeke and Deke were bounty hunters went on stealing the gold from Rhodes and intent on stealing the gold from Rhodes and leaving anyone who got in their way stretched out in the prairie as buzzard bait. You rode with them? Astonishment filled her words. Why'd you be so stupid as to do something like that? You had to know they were going to kill you, too. I needed their tracking skills. You didn't leave much of a trail. It rained a couple of times. That slowed me down finding the gang, she said. She did back behind the cottonwood and reloaded. She slid back behind the cottonwood and reloaded. So you expect me to believe you used them? Something like that. I knew when they told me to pitch camp, they found you. So that's where we have it. When they told him to pitch camp, he was convinced that they'd found the woman. Because you got to remember, they were after a single rider. They didn't know it was going to be a woman. They were after the single rider. But the problem was when you're trying to find somebody, you don't put up camp unless you're totally wiped out. You have no choice. They camped, and he figured he knew that he found her. So what was going on? He needed to catch up with her because he knew that they may not be the nicest people on the planet. So anyway, something like that. I knew when they told me to pitch camp, they found you. So you blundered into the middle of a gunfight to save me? You don't have to be so sarcastic. It looks as if I have come to your aid. He got off a couple of shots where he saw a shadow move. From the way the bushes moved, he had been decoyed into wasting the rounds. Whatever else he thought of the two men out there, they were cunning and vicious. If you had a worry on that score, you would have brought the Crossroads posse along with you. I wouldn't want to get you in even deeper trouble. Why did you say that? Marta fired a couple more times. They then sank back to let the bounty hunters waste some of their ammunition. Who helped me break out of jail by slipping me a derringer? Or have you forgotten that? Luke heard her grumble and had to smile in spite of their predicament. She might have used him just as she had tried with Nelson. Get a crook out and watch where he ran. Only he wasn't one of the gang, and Nelson had been used by Benedict and eventually murdered in a blast that sent blood and body parts sky high. I wish I had a couple of sticks of dynamite right now, Luke said. Are you letting Raleigh Rhodes influence you? Another box or two of cartridges would go better. She chanced a quick look. Neither Zeke nor Deke shot at her. She turned to him. They're coming around to get us in a crossfire. They think the stream will keep us pinned here, so they'll attack from each flank. Luke considered this for a moment, then said, the way for us to get out is to head that way. He pointed toward where the bounty hunters had initially attacked. If they moved to the right and the left, that meant the center was undefended. If I'm wrong, we'll run smack into their guns. Marta looked hard at him. She was mostly cloaked in shadow, but he saw her brown eyes gleaming in the dark. Are you wrong? Could be, but you don't think so. You're a Pinkerton agent. You know things like this. Hold on, she said. The horses, if we take our horses and get across to theirs, we've got them pinned here. Where are they? The horses. Closer to the stream. Cover me. Before Luke objected, she lit out. He stood and fired off to his right flank, where one bounty hunter might be hiding. The response he produced with his wild shooting warned him. Zeke cried out in real pain. He had winged the man by shooting at shadows. Luke spun around in a crouch and emptied his 6-gun in the other direction. Deke was luckier. He hadn't made it as far around as his partner, causing Luke to guess wrong as to his location. The thudding of horse hooves warned him that Marta had fetched the horses. He swung up into the saddle, glad she hadn't taken time to drop the tack to the ground to let the horse rest. Leaning forward, his head near his uh, mare's, he galloped fast and hard to get away. It felt good having a powerful, fleet steed under him again after the plodding draft horse. Exultation lasted only a few yards. His horse stumbled and fell forward to its knees, sending him flying over his head. It landed hard. A loud scream while he flew like a bird exhausted the air from his lungs to be, pardon me, so he wasn't badly stunned when he landed. Every bone in his body ached, but the air hadn't been knocked out of him. He was learning all the tricks needed to keep from taking himself out of a fight. Luke rolled onto his belly and saw that everything had gone wrong with the attempted escape. His horse had been shot from the rear. The bullet had ripped the length of the horse, killing it instantly. Worse than this, Marta's horse had also been cut down from under her. It screamed and kicked and thrashed about. A back leg had been broken by the bounty hunter's fire. Luke rose to lay down, covering fire for the Pinkerton agent. His hammer fell on empty chambers, one after another, as he kept pulling the trigger. Run! Run! Marta waved for him to keep going. If they reached the far side of the clearing, they could claim the gunmen's horses and strand Deke and Zeke. What are you doing? He almost went to her. She tugged hard to get the saddlebags free and from her panicked gelding. Leave it. There's nothing you got in there's worth dying for. I told you to run, decoy their fire. Luke realized this was the only course of action left to him. There wasn't time to reload, and dying to save Marta Shuring gave him his only possible satisfaction now. Standing and being gunned down served no purpose. Here I am. He stood upright and waved his arms, then began dodging with a lurch to his right. He drew both men's fire. A feint the other way caused them to waste more bullets. But when they figured out his pattern, twice the sharp, hot bite of lead tore through him. The first grazed his side, leaving a shallow, oozing wound. The other proved more embarrassing than dangerous. It tore a chunk of meat from his left buttock. He stumbled and fell. The wound prevented his legs from moving smoothly or at all. He began crawling and found a shallow depression that afforded some cover. Flopping into it, he reloaded his pistol and looked back, praying Marta had eluded the deadly fusillade. She was on her knees halfway to him. He shouted to her, but she ignored him. Leaning forward, she dug like a gopher, throwing dirt into the air. He had no idea what she hunted for, but he took a couple measured shots past her, hoping to drive the bounty hunters out where he had better targets. The answering orange tongues of flame from their six-shooters were nowhere near where he expected them. He shifted aim, but held his fire. Marta was in the way. Get down. Okay. Marta was in the way. Get down. Get their horses, she ordered. We can strand them if you get their horses. She slung the saddlebags over her shoulder and finally ran to them. There wasn't room in a shallow earthen bowl for both of them. She dodged and then raced past, shouting, "Cover me!" He did his best, but his sixth gun came up empty too fast. His sense of hitting his target told him he needed more practice. After the first couple times he winged Deke, every shot had been a clean miss. She dodged and ducked and came back to lie beside Luke. A bump of her hip moved him a little out of the cavity. Neither of them had total protection from the steady rain of lead coming at them. Twisting around, she dumped the saddlebags in front and rested her gun. hand top on top. Twin holes in the leather showed that the saddlebags had already stopped bullets intended to kill her. I'll run to the left and draw that fire. You get to the horses. Luke stared back at his dead horse. It had served him well. Marta's horse still thrashed about in pain from his shattering back leg. He ran his fingers over the hot barrel of his Schofield, wishing he had one final bullet to put that horse out of its misery. You shouldn't. You'd shoot the horse instead of saving yourself. He looked at her and nodded. I'd rather plug those all hoots. She scooted forward and pressed against the saddlebags, aiming down the barrel of her pistol. You looking to tend to your horse? I've got one round left. I ran through my ammunition about the same time you did. You don't have more in your saddlebags? Luke deflated. She had risked her life to retrieve the twin pouches. He expected more from that wild act of bravery. She didn't answer. Like a statue, she held her position. Her concentration was total and blanked him out of the world. One shot remained. Luke wondered if Deke or Zeke would be the receiving end. Even in his nightmares, he had never expected his life to end this way in a wild shootout. Luke decided it could be worse, but great regret weighed him down. Rhodes and his gang deserved nooses around their necks for all they had done during the war and after. Sarah Youngblood might be crazy as a loon, but she didn't deserve her fate at the hands of the outlaws. And his biggest regret came from not facing crazy Water Benedict. The man deserved personal justice, not that meted out by some judge and an executioner. Luke wanted to see the man's face as he shot him down. It wouldn't be a killing like Benedict had expected at the wedding ceremony. His last thought would be seeing Luke, Hadley pulling the trigger. Pardon me, and thinking he had, made a mistake of his life, trying to kill a helpless groom and kidnap the bride. You have my ammo. Any ammo left at all? Luke checked at final time. He came up dry. If we both make a break, that'll force them to divide their fire. He said, they've had plenty of time to get to range. And from the way you're bleeding, how fast can you run? Luke winced as he touched his buttocks. The grazing wound on his side burned like fire, but wasn't too serious. Trying to run was out of the question. With half his ham all shot up, the walking proved chance. Blood already caked his pants and made movement painful. I'm not going anywhere. You save yourself. Do you have a death wish? She scowled. Never give up, ever. There's always hope. You expect a pair of them to come up as single file so you can drill them both with one shot? She laughed, and it was an ugly sound, something like that. Yeah, exactly that. She pressed forward even more and held her 6-gun in both hands to steady it. When she cocked it, Luke peered over the lip of dirt to see what the bounty hunters were up to. Deke waved a bandana and called a truce. We want parley. We want a parley. She say, what's on your mind, Martin? It tensed even more. Deke stepped out, still waving his red and white flag. Zeke joined his partner. They exchanged a quick whisper, then they walked slowly toward her. There's no call for us to waste bullets on each other. Deke called. He shifted the truce flag to his left hand. He's getting ready to go for his piece when he gets close to enough to see us there. So Zeke, Luke felt empty inside. The end of the trail had come too soon for him. He glanced at Marta, for the Pinkerton agent too. The bounty hunters had figured out that they had to make a move now, dangerous as it was, or they'd lose their horses. Luke looked around for a rock to throw. That was as close as to retaliation he could get. Zeke and Deke would walk right up and gun them down. He wished Marta used his slow advance to get away while it was possible. If the gunmen got much closer, they'd have a clear field of fire. I know, she said. Wait, keep down and wait. Luke called out, do the right thing and put the horse out of its agony. You shot it. You should put it down. The men exchanged another quick whisper. I'm not wasting my ammunition. It's your horse. We'll let you come out so you can do the right thing. Or are you out of ammunition? You're trying to make us run too. Zeke took a couple steps closer. Their guest. They've guessed we won't. They've guessed we don't have any way of stopping them, Marta said. I've got one shot. One shot. She muttered over and over that she had one shot. Luke had no idea how winging one of the bounty hunters helped them. The remaining one would rush them. He saw he had been right about Deke being wounded, but compared with the hole in his own butt, but the other man was unscathed. This is it. Get ready, Marta said softly. She settled down and called, You two, no counts. Don't come any closer. You stop right there. I'm warning you. Deke and Zeke looked at each other, grinned, tossed aside the bandana, drew their guns, and started toward their victims. Luke wondered at Marta. She counted backward from five. When she got to one, she pulled the trigger. The report made Luke cringe. The explosion that came almost instantly after deafened him. A shower of dirt and rock cascaded down over him, blinding him. He sucked in a mouthful of dust and choked. Through ringing ears, he heard Marta shout, Get him now. It's our only chance. She swarmed over the saddlebags she had used as a bulwark. Luke tried to follow as she ran toward the crater dug in the ground, but his leg refused to work right. He began dragging it behind him, using both hands to pull forward. Pain shot through the length of his legs, but he ignored it to keep moving after Marta. He came to the edge of a shallow crater. At one side lay her dead horse, put out of its pain by the explosion. He bobbled forward to the settling dust and bumped into the Pinkerton agent. She shoved something into his hands. He fumbled and almost dropped a pair of six-shooters. It took a few seconds to realize she had stripped the guns from Deke and Zeke. Luke held in one each hand, then limped forward to where the men lay sprawled on their backs, staring up at the sky. They moaned and thrashed about weakly. Luke trained his guns on their former owners. Don't move, either of you. Nothing would give me more pleasure than shoot you. Marta worked to relieve them of their gun belts and the bullets carried there. She performed a quick search and tossed aside a couple of knives. Only when she was assured herself they were stripped of weapons did she step back. I've got handcuffs in my saddlebags. Keep them covered, Mr. Hadley. Luke felt giddy. Whether it came from the sudden reversal of fortune or the loss of blood hardly mattered. He was strong enough to pull the triggers if either man may move the muscle. It might have been an hour or only a minute, but Marta's shearing returned with the shackles. The sharp metal click as she fastened them brought Luke back from wherever he drifted to. Let me have this one. She tugged harder to get him to release the pistol he held in his hand. He finally relented. She whispered in his ear, You go on over to the stream. I'll get you patched up as soon as I secure these two, so they don't go running away. He nodded. He understood her, but other concerns bubbled up that seemed more important. What blew up? What? I had a couple sticks of dynamite and used my last bullet to detonate. Now go to the stream, get those jeans off. Been a while since a woman said that to me. Luke wondered why she laughed. He hadn't realized he was joking. Dragging his gimpy leg behind, he started hobbling toward the gentle sounds of a running stream. Not even sitting in the icy water brought him back to full consciousness, but feeling the woman's fingers fumbling to undress him came close. And that is the end of that chapter. And we are now going to start on page 174 the next time. We've finished chapter 13. What a shoot 'em up. I mean, a gunfight between the two, and it was quite intense. But that's the nature of the book. It's a very intense book. There's a lot of description. There's a lot of intensity. There's a lot of just description. A lot of detail. And it looks like Luke and Marta are right now back together again. And the bounty hunters. We'll see what happens to them. But the story continues. The saga continues. We're going to figure out what's going to happen. How much longer before they finally find the Rhodes Gang and Sarah Youngblood and his wife Audrey? How much longer? This is turning out to be quite a interesting story. Thanks for listening.